Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of where I put all my completions onto a tier list. For today, I have 10 campaigns planned. Here's what got placed in the previous episode, and the rules still remain unchanged. With that said, let's not waste any more time than needed and get straight to it. Let's start off with a fun fact. I actually got to play on both versions of Whispers of Winter, that being the deluxe version and the one before said deluxe update. Both are also uploaded on this channel, so you could theoretically compare them to see what got changed. As the name suggests, this campaign takes place at winter, so there's snow everywhere, which means some winter voice lines are available for usage. Speaking of voice lines, there is some banter between the survivors in each safe room, so that's a nice touch. More about the campaign itself, it takes place in the more generic locations, like a mall, research lab, and a harbor. Although two locations stick out from the rest, namely the train yard and the lighthouse finale. I have some issues with this chapter however. A giant warehouse without any guidance whatsoever, so I suggest learning the layout in advance before knocking on Church Guy's door. Or well, Train Car Guy in this case. But unlike Church Guy's event, you need to shut off the alarm he set off instead of just waiting it out like normal. Here's to see if you prepared beforehand. After turning off the last switch, you still need to shoot down the main generator on the roof of the warehouse, and right after, Train Car Guy transformed into a special infected, and you may end off this chaotic sequence of events. While on the topic of events, chapters 1 and 2 also had one each, but they aren't that interesting, so I'll go over them quickly. The holdout in the mall can be easily beaten if you hold out in this store with red walls, and I just straight up broke the crescendo event in chapter 2. I still don't know how I did it, but pretend that there are zombies rushing towards you during this part, but it was dead silent. I guess I'll put it in my list of skippable events just to show off. And then there's the lighthouse after conquering the harbor crescendo event. This isn't the typical lighthouse layout as it's squared instead of round. I wonder how life would be if you would live in one of these bad boys. This interaction during the double tank finale was also somewhat hilarious. I'm starting to appreciate this boss infected. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I like campaigns with a hint of snow as it contradicts the usual campaign creation process. But you could turn any campaign snowy with the winter aesthetics add-on, but I refrain from doing so. Since the snow comes standard with Whispers of Winter, as well as funny custom survivor dialogue, I will still be placing it in above average, because face it, it still goes through the generic Left 4 Dead 2 gameplay loop. Since when did Buried Deep get a winter update? Absolute Zero already makes itself unique by having something that no other custom campaign has, namely an epilogue. I'll be combining this and the actual campaign because it would be weird to have two Absolute Zeros on the tier list, and also the fact that they would share the same poster and outro title card. If you thought Drop Dead Gorgeous was vertical, then this takes the cake for the most amount of vertical gameplay featured in a single campaign. It also doesn't help that there's ice all over the place, so you could essentially call this chapter Slippy Hill. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows for this campaign, as the first major grudge I have with the epilogue is that there's this guy on the radio, and all he does is shout,
"Incoming explosions! Massive horde incoming! Get ready!"
This is not the problem however, it's the fact that I don't hear any explosion at all when he says his iconic line. The only explosion I will be hearing are those of my own pipe bombs. This problem also persists through chapter 2, where the path also seemingly gets smaller and smaller with some added falling hazards, but the most interesting chapter has to be the last one. If the two previous chapters didn't have enough random bullshit in them, then a fully operational train wouldn't hurt, right? Well, of course it brings in a couple of flaws. Every time you sound the horde, then the horde will come towards you. Even the announcer comes through to tell you that it isn't the brightest of ideas to do that.
You really shouldn't have pulled that, but I'm pretty sure it's fun, right?
The bot's pathfinding isn't the greatest around it, and logically, it kills any survivor while moving. The only way to get rid of the blockade is to shoot it from a very far distance to not take any damage. There will be some extra supplies around the blockade. You also don't have to go to the very end of the rails, as you need to go through this gate in order to get rescued. Holding out in this building can be hectic, but if you play your cards right, it shouldn't be a problem. Until the very end. The door to the rooftop helipad takes a while to open up, and there's a tank to keep you in check, so you might have to do some evasive maneuvers to get the job done. And that's the epilogue dusted. And then there's Absolute Zero itself. Saying that it's difficult is an understatement, but where does it all come from? Each chapter has its own event to keep your skill in check. But for the sake of the length of this segment, I'll only go over the actual difficult events. Halfway through chapter 2, you need to power up a generator to unlock some doors, but it will malfunction after a while and needs repairing. Meanwhile, the water is electrified, meaning you will take damage if you touch it. There are some barricades lying around the place, but they are useless, as they get broken easily. After the generator works again, you need to wait a while before hacking the logs to then open them up when suddenly a tank spawns in. Very fun! There was also an event prior to the generator, but you just needed to gun down some pillars with the Gatling gun. A relaxing ride, huh? Well, I could certainly use one of those after going through all that previous bullcrap. Although, I didn't trust that piece of text at all. Fighting zombies that drop down you isn't exactly amusing. Especially special infected can be a real pain. Oh, I almost forgot. There's also a guaranteed tank spawn once you reach the top. It seems like I can't get a break. Chapter 4 has to be the second hardest. You already get an event when you leave the safe room. Setting off a nuke to venture through the catacombs isn't the first thing that came to mind, but sure. In fact, the explosion radius is so big that you need to retreat all the way back over here, otherwise you'll get incapped by the hydrogen bomb. Looking back on chapter 4, it feels like the entire thing is an event, because as soon as you get this message, every witch you kill attracts a horde. Also birds, but they can be avoided easily. The finale makes an extreme leap in difficulty. It's fair to say it's almost impossible on expert difficulty. Not only is the holdout area very awkward to play in, it's entirely covered by trees that block visibility, and halfway through, an armored tank will make an entry. This is both an up and downside. The tank helps you gun down infected, but will still kill anything it touches when it's on the move to explode the barricade. Right before blowing it up, 2 infected tanks will spawn in to end your run. Honestly, I don't know what I can tell you to make it easier. After navigating through the area beyond the blockade, you can call Bravo team for rescue. Whatever you do, do not hang out around this area, as another tank will fire at that spot, setting the place ablaze. Hey, that rhymed. Since the tank will crush anything in front of it, you can just save up on supplies until the final sprint. Once that rescue arrived text pops up, absolutely book it to the runway to end off another distant relative of Berry Deep. I still feel like I forgot something. Alright, the visuals are pretty good by my standards. There's snow, ancient icy ruins with some greenery as well, but the ice physics? No thank you. If you would look at the gameplay alone, then it will simply be a mess, but the aesthetics save Absolute Zero from being placed in the same tier as Sector 74 and Cold Stream. I'll actually place it right next to Whispers of Winter. How about that? A quick disclaimer, this is not the director's cut version of Freezing Point, as I've yet to play it. Now that all the confusion is cleared up, we're still in the winter season. Like I said in the previous 2 segments, I don't mind that at all. The main attraction of this campaign is the giant mansion and the secret it holds inside. But first you gotta break into the place by collecting lockpicks scattered across the front yard. Once inside, push 3 buttons to activate the lift to then descend into a secret lab. This place looks pretty high tech. Now the most logical question to ask here is, how the hell do we get out? First you have to pass through some more laboratory and a chaotic holdout event before reaching this computer. You have to fix it first, of course, before asking it nicely to leave the compound.
Go to hell!
Warning. Prejudiced or hateful speech has been detected. As part of our anti-bias training, this system will now use an Italian accent to ensure diverse cultural exposure for everyone present.
God damn it!
That aside, the gameplay is also pretty balanced throughout Freezing Point. Although I don't understand why you would put a metal detector in your house. I know this segment isn't that long, just go play it for yourself. It's that good! And if that first playthrough was too fast, then you can go Easter egg hunting. There are map exclusive achievements and the eggs themselves are also comedy gold.
Are you honestly using meta not just because you lost your first game? You're a flipping scrub. I'm not a scrub just for picking a top tier fighter. It's the smart thing to do. Who gives a flying sticky jump if it's smart? We're playing goddamn friendlies, you sore loser! I will not apologize for playing to win. You are the real scrub here. Oh, so I'm the bloody scrub now? Yes, indeed. Bullshit!
Sadly, this is the short version of Freezing Point, but it's still awesome nonetheless. I didn't expect a return to Valencia that fast, and yet, here I am. I wasn't quite as hyped like my first arrival, likely because I haven't been to this part of the city, although I could recognize some elements in the final chapter. The first two chapters play almost the same, but chapter 2 has a more labyrinth-like structure to it. For example, this event where you have to turn off an alarm literally has these storage units placed in a way that forcibly make you take a detour. And this area filled with cars calls for a disaster whenever a tank spawns in, turning a regular fight into a game of dodgeball, except the opponent is a tyrant on steroids and the ball is a 2003 Ford Crown Victoria. And take a look at this place, it looks like it came straight out of a post you'd see on r/liminal spaces. The only real interesting thing to talk about is chapter 3, because it is absolutely massive. In fact, it would be a good open world exploration experience if there weren't metal fences all over the place. It legit took me 30 minutes to get from the safe room down in the underground parking lot to the final evacuation point on the roof of some apartment complex. And there are not that many graffiti arrows to help you get to the elevator, and you might loop around a bunch, only to find an arrow that points towards the direction you already came from. The rooftop finale can be made more interesting by turning on the jukebox. It doesn't play copyrighted music to my knowledge, because it's made by the creators of this very campaign. If you would like a more fun experience regarding this city, you should play Escape from Valencia instead. It's literally made by the same people and has more exciting things to offer. I also ranked it in the previous episode if you're somewhat skeptical about giving it a go for yourself. But for now, Last Summer is boring, but its visuals are okay. Maybe the apocalypse isn't such a great time for a vacation. Might as well check out this hotel while we're at it. Instead of entering it by the front door, we barge in it through the sewers. Like men. This also might be the most detailed sewer section I've ever seen. No contest at all. But it's still a sewer section, but there will be some fun things in there to keep you entertained. After the break out, you do a break in. Hotel Ramsey, huh? The Ramsey? I hope we don't run into an infected version of him. I gotta admit, this hotel is quite the sight for sore eyes, until you enter this kitchen nightmare. Why is it so big? This pool area actually made me feel like I was on a holiday. If only all these zombies weren't here to ruin the moment. This is by far my favorite part of this dead vacation. In the safe room of chapter 4, Bill jinxed the group by making the power turn off by itself. Luckily, the server room isn't that far from the checkpoints, so get to it if you want to check out of Hotel Ramses. Right at the end of this chapter is a difficult elevator event where the special infected spawn rate got increased. It's like a new one would spawn in whenever I killed a different one on the spot. On top of all that, if you take too long to get in the elevator, a tank will smash its way into the lobby. Now here's where things get funky. That vacation has two finale sequences, one with some wacky additions and the other without them. I usually stick with the original as the extra added bullshit makes for fun gameplay, even though these barricades are useless. The only interesting thing that happens is when the helicopter arrives. The building that got struck by a commercial airliner collapses onto the area you were playing the finale on, and it's your job to navigate to the chopper safe and sound, all while a hidden timer is ticking down. If it reaches 0, then the building will collapse and everything still on there will die. That was quite a chaos for just one escape sequence. If you don't like all of that, you can choose for an alternative finale, where the building doesn't get destroyed and the hidden timer is removed. It feels like only the last 3 chapters have something interesting to offer, with the sewer section being a bit dragged out and the first chapter being basically non-existent. I'll put it between all the other above average campaigns for my final judgment. The title of this custom is pretty straightforward. I don't even have to play the campaign in order to know what it has in store for me. The campaign takes the survivor through a more rural and natural environment with some urban areas in between. It's the standard stuff which I won't go over, but I will go over the events this lengthy detour has to offer. Chapter 4 has an event on the tracks. The red train car needs to move all the way to the end, and the zombies can spawn on the roofs next door, which isn't fun, but it doesn't make this event stale at the very least. And then, the finale is a big difficulty spike in comparison to the other 4 chapters. It's a large crescendo finale where you need to run to the other end of the road to turn on the fuel truck, only to return back to the helicopter for an escape. The sequence starts when this plane crashes into the Green Dragon fireworks factory and lasts until you take off with the chopper. Tanks will also spawn in between, but only around this red truck with loot on top of its trailer. The trip to the fuel truck isn't that bad, but it's the return where difficulty rises. What I like to do is wait at the aforementioned truck until the horde music stops, and only then I can have a normal fight without infected disrupting the flow. You also gotta remember the way back, as it's frustrating to redo everything just because you get lost. Unfortunately, Detour Ahead isn't that appealing to me, besides the finale. That thing is somehow kinda hype. It'll be a mid-campaign for its placement on my tier list. Here's another 2-for-1 special. Judging by the name, it's all about finding an antidote to stop this green flu mayhem. Cure 1 takes the gang through some weird locations that make no sense, and the first 3 chapters are littered with random traps. Chapter 1 isn't that exciting, so I'll skip over it. Chapter 2 takes a turn to the bizarre side, with lightning being replaced with boulders, lasers everywhere, and landmines also make an appearance. They do a lot of damage for anyone wondering, but just like in Fallout's Black Mesa, you can shoot them from a distance to make them explode earlier. If the 3 towers in the previous chapter weren't that spectacular, how about a giant one in the next? Climbing the thing is harder than it looks. You need to go all the way around just to go back to the tower. The weirdest part is that the save room isn't in the tower but across another one of those bridges. The journey through chapter 3 is unusual as well. There are a bunch of tanks on top of the tower that keep throwing rocks at random locations. A lot of witches roam around aimlessly, and the surprise tank will come out of these trucks with closed trunks. There's also a green jockey that appears on top of the tower when you get near the safe room, but he just stands there. Chapter 4 holds the cure, but you have to scale the hospital before getting it. Also, how does this connect to the previous chapter? It's just a regular building you go through, and once you reach the reception area, the antidote is yours. After leaving the building, you need to go all the way around the hospital before reaching chapter 5. I don't know why the author made this decision, but it drags out the campaign by a lot, and it gets boring really fast. Chapter 5 also doesn't hold anything unusual, except for the reversing train and the many witches around the final area. Even the finale is boring, but that's mainly because the tank spawns are bugged, aka they just die when spawned in. So you just have to live through the 2 horde sections before taking off to Cure 2. Well, that helicopter ride was short-lived. Hey, that clown stole our antidote for the green flu. I guess that marks the goal for Cure 2. Go to the house immediately because that tank on top of the water tower will come after you. Be sure to loot this area because there will be a holdout event later that transitions into a weird maze section. Cure 2 really took a turn to the bizarre side, but that might be an understatement. Normally I'd complain about the lack of graffiti arrows, but now there are too many arrows in these buildings. Some of them even loop back to each other. You need to collect 4 gnomes in chapter 3 before continuing on, but before that there's a holdout event that's easily cheesed by standing in the safe room. The scavenge can begin when the howitzer is fired and the gnome spawns are randomized on each attempt. When that's dealt with, you need to do this weird minigame of pushing a stone back up a ramp with the other shotgun. Be aware, special infected can still enter the room and end your run. The safe room is behind the flame wall. Check it out! Kittyland! One thing that I didn't expect is a golfing minigame. The concept is simple. Get a hole in one and the gate to the next hole will open up. Gotta admit, this is peak creativity. I mean, what other custom campaign has a functioning golf course in it? Minigolf isn't the only activity in the kiddie park. After you're done, you have to run to the last safe room while infinite hordes spawn in. The only thing that remains is the finale. Hidden at Durden still has a couple of tricks up their sleeve. For one, a cable car that only lasts halfway through. I don't know what the idea was. Suddenly, a performance by the same witches who were wakeboarding a couple of chapters ago. I don't want to know if the music is copyright material, but I'd say it isn't. The cure is guarded by a witch that will attack the person who broke the glass. Now that the goal has been reached, it's time to get out of this weird place. I'd expect the laboratory to be the final place of rescue and not a castle. It's surprisingly easy to hold down, but beware, the rescue blimp takes a while to reach the top of the castle, so I suggest waiting a bit longer once you hear the escape sequence music play. On another note, I also didn't expect the Zeppelin to be the rescue vehicle. That was one hell of a journey, son. But where should I place these two monstrosities? Cure 1 was average in the first 3 chapters, with the giant tower being the highlight. But the fun died out once chapter 4 and 5 came around, and where do I start with Cure 2? I like the fun little gimmicks, but it's all over the place and the scenery isn't that impressive, except for the castle, which I kinda liked. Both cures aren't cohesive storytelling wise, so how about this? Cure 1 is boring but okay, and to sum up Cure 2, it's simply a mess. Should be relatively easy, so I'll keep this simple. We found that a doomsday cult is using radio messages to lure survivors into deadly traps, so just stroll through the abandoned city, take out their radio tower, then come back home. Got that? The very beginning of the campaign already introduces a new quirk. The survivors drop at 4 different points across the spawn area, which means you will have to play solo for a small moment before reuniting with the rest. If you get grabbed or pinned, then the chances of survival are pretty much zero. After the short reunion, prepare to be taken through a cityscape with a lot of mazes. I'm not kidding, it felt like I was actively getting lost instead of progressing. But unlike last summer, the area is filled up with walls and buildings instead of being a big open spot with fences scattered around it. Nighttime also makes navigating harder. Just look how dark it is inside this abandoned building. There are 3 interesting events to talk about. In chapter 2, you need to blow up a wall with propane canisters, but they are hidden around this maze-like structure. I can only imagine how much more time consuming this is on realism mode. The junkyard in chapter 3 also caught my attention. In order to open this set of garage doors, you need to fetch the key up on the hill, but it's guarded by a tank which also tends to crush you by throwing car wrecks down the hill. Worst of all, you still need to fight him once you're near the shack that holds the key. And then finally, the radio tower. It shares the same concept as the wall in chapter 2, except they're scattered across the rooftop. Clear the vicinity after shooting it down, otherwise the thing you needed to destroy destroys you. I'd normally say this is a regular finale sequence, but the area is more open than usual, so there's a small break in the generic finale cycle. Other than that unique addition in the very beginning of Deadenator, it will reside inside of mid-tier. Of course I saved the best for last. This is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of nature-based campaigns. There's just something about hiking up mountains that intrigues me. Devil Mounted offers more than just nature. You also go through a handful of locations, like houses, a quarry, this really nice cave section, and the finale building being the cherry on top of this devious cake. Let's talk about events. The first of which being at the end of chapter 2, where you have to blow up this barricade with dynamite and then rush to the safe room. It always felt like there were more infected during this than any other crescendo I played before, but that might be a myth. The previously mentioned cave also holds a barricade event, but you have to sit this one out instead of running. An easy way to survive this holdout is to back up a little so you don't have to deal with the infected dropping from above. The finale is also quite interesting. There are several viable holdout spots around the building, but I like to station myself at either the 50 cal near the entrance or the plateau where the chopper will be after surviving this finale's double tank encounter. Once again, this segment isn't that long, but go play it yourself. Every nature enjoyer will have a blast climbing the back of this beast. I even went as far as to turn off every infected spawn and just walk through the campaign to appreciate its scenery. It only took 3 episodes for another S tier campaign to appear, but I will be placing it lower because the chapters were on the shorter side of the spectrum. And that's it for today. If you didn't notice, I was tinkering with a new approach to keep the segment shorter. I tried to talk about the campaigns in general instead of going into extreme detail. I don't think I perfected this format yet, but let me know if you prefer this style of commentary or the one in the previous 4 episodes. And it's that time in the outro where I say that I ran out of things to talk about. In that case, I'll see you in the next one.